AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
One thing that is fair to say across the board is that publishers have to become very comfortable with using technology. Historically, we didn't come out of the technology business, but I can see the publishers who did have a huge edge, and they're just fast-forwarding ahead of the others. If I can do it, you can do it.
This is Small Press, Big Ideas, a podcast about the business of local news in the United States. I'm your host, Paul Gilbert. Small Press Big Ideas is about the opportunities and challenges that local news publishers are facing for their businesses. I'll sit down and talk with journalists, entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and more in the local news industry to find out what's working, what isn't, and how the local news ecosystem can innovate and flourish in the 21st century. Okay, today on the podcast, I am joined by Alisa Cromer. Alisa is the publisher of NichePublisher.biz. She has some history at the Reynolds Journalism Institute, way back in media from the looks of it. And we just met and we're having a great conversation. So Alisa, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Kind of to set the stage, I ask everybody this, and once again, it's our first time meeting. I'd love if you could just kind of tell us about your background and your story and local media in general, like kind of what's brought you here now, and back as far as you want to go. I'd love to hear that.
Okay, so I started I've been in journalism. I was writing for newspapers, local newspapers when I was in college, and I started a business journal right out of college. So my journey with media kind of maps what actually happened in the landscape. At the time, it was a business journal, and you could literally operate on a shoestring. But if you had two reporters and the daily newspaper, this was in Las Vegas, Nevada, had one business reporter, we had two, you have double the coverage. You can distribute it differently and write to that audience, and immediately you're beating the daily. So the alt weeklies did the same thing. And so both of these categories, they grew really fast. I mean, you almost couldn't do anything wrong, and they grew really fast. They consolidated, and then people started selling out to the consolidators. So I sold my company, which was an alt weekly and a business journal, in 92, wanted to do some turnarounds. The media is still growing. And I think the peak, if I have to look at my own experience, was 1999-ish, 2000, when we sold a group of alt weeklies. Only 3, 2 were not in major markets, and we sold it for $22 million.
Jeez.
Three little newspapers. Yeah.
I was not expecting you to say that number. I was gonna think like 3. I don't know. Yeah.
Things have changed.
Yeah.
So, and then, as the internet was already here by that point, but I worked I kept working for alt weeklies. And when I stopped in 2010, believe it or not, the media conferences were still having people talking about innovator's dilemma and why you need to separate or perish because of the internet. Now we have a new disruptive technology, and it's equally applicable today. Carl Christensen, who wrote that book about how the smartest people in the room for 20 years can never compete with the startups that are operating on the edge. And talking to a group of 400 newspaper publishers, none of whom believed him for a minute. And so I started Local Media Insider to just go to the conferences, find out more about this disruption and what people are thinking and what they were doing, and report on it. Quite like what you're doing now. And it evolved into Niche Publisher, which is what I'm doing now. When I went to a conference, I wanted to cover these niche publishers for Local Media Insider. And it was really interesting. I felt like I had found my people because they were very entrepreneurial. They were experimenting with different business models. A lot of them are not afraid of technology. And the very, very different from what was going on in local media, where you had regional publishers sort of gobbling up the little tiny publications and then hyper local developing, which is extremely interesting, and magazines and so forth. But which are the hyper local and the magazines are all part of this group, but that are local. But I think just the fundamental premise really hadn't changed. If you can supply unique content that is hard to get anywhere else to an exclusive audience, then you have a niche, a valuable niche somewhere, whatever it is. If it gets too general, then you start having problems. So yeah, and I came home. I think I had started NichePublisher.biz within 2 months after that conference.
Wow. And could you tell me a little bit about, that was kind of my next question, NichePublisher.biz? Like what is, I mean, I kind of did some research, but what do you guys kind of offer, publish there?
Sure.
I think peer studies, peer shared media reports, et cetera. What's your day-to-day kind of look like there?
So the challenge is, these live conferences are the bomb. However, during the rest of the year, you need a way to access relationships and peer shared information and that kind of stuff. So we started with the case study approach. We always focus on technology and what people are using but how they're using it also. And so that's kind of the content. It's not breaking news. We don't say somebody bought this company. We're going to use a tool to acquire that information, but really it's about this pure shared concept. And then we do roundtables. And so if you go on the site, you can search by topic and by media category. But if you really want to be only, local or only B2B, you can search by those. You can find really useful, practical things that you can put into a business plan.
Yeah, that's cool. The site, I was just kind of browsing through it, doing research for this, and looks like some high value stuff. You talked to kind of in that first question about, if you can deliver, I forget how you phrased it, high value information to the right audience is still like a great business, and that's obviously what you kind of look at all day there. Could you, and I know there's case studies of interesting models that I've seen on Niche Publisher. Are there any lessons that come to mind? This podcast is kind of focused on local media,
Sure.
and how it can become sustainable stuff. Are there any lessons that come to mind for local media that you've seen in other sectors, maybe B2B, I don't know, what else, that are working that maybe local has been not struggling at, but could take some lessons from?
Yeah, absolutely. I've thought about this too, because I do want to tie it back to your audience. And so I will say that, so first of all, B2B has an edge because their audience has a big purchasing power. Usually it's maybe a corporate purchaser. That's sort of the model. However, one thing that is fair to say across the board is that publishers have to become very comfortable with using technology. Historically, we didn't come out of the technology business, but I can see the publishers who did have a huge edge, and they're just fast forwarding ahead of the others. If I can do it, you can do it. That's what I would say, because I spend 2 hours a day with my web development team, and they are in a different time zone, and I'm using a project management system, all those things that do not go with journalism. And I'm sole proprietor. So all these people, it's not like I can say, hey, John, can you do this? It doesn't work that way. Everything has to be very structured. I've got to keep them interested. I can't say I'm not good at it, but there's only how good I can get if you're not a programmer, to tell you the truth. And you don't have someone on your team who's a programmer. Then you have to have 2, and then they could butt heads. So it's painful. I get it. And it's time consuming, but you have to do it, because everything else that we're going to talk about, and that's why I brought this up first, requires technology. If you can't build your own technology, then you're stuck with a content management system that you're paying for in one way or another, and you cannot build what you want without building another website, and then you're back in the game again, right? So if you want to build a different type of ad unit, you want e-commerce advertising that goes straight in your newsletter, I don't know any CMS system that allows you to do that. So if you want to do that, you're going to have to build it. The models that I think are most interesting, and I went back, we did a survey, we researched 18 revenue models. Actually, we researched 140 niche publishers, including hyperlocal, city magazines, B2B, and so on. They weren't as different as you'd think in terms of the revenue models. There's basically 4 models. If the average is 4. So if you're just selling ads against content, and then you have the least, I would say, you're compared to your other local media and niche media company. So, you think ads against content, subscriptions, events, people have gone into events, and content marketing. So, and newsletters, newsletter revenues. So I'm going to start with newsletter revenues because I think that is the most underdeveloped revenue source for local media companies. And so when you think about it, well, we all know that the traffic is diminishing because of AI overviews and direct chat GPT, which is growing all the time. When you look at the advertisers, not only do they want content marketing, but they also want to go directly to your most engaged readers. They are very interested in posting content into your newsletter and, whatever that is. I wouldn't necessarily think of ads on newsletters. You could put them there. They're great. Fine. But I do think that there's different kinds of formats. So I want to bring up 2. One is, oddly enough, podnews.net.
I love that
Yeah.
that newsletter. I read it every morning. Quick aside, sorry, I'll let you get back into it. Do you know Guy Tasaka?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine, and he had also. I saw you had a write up on them. He also did a write up on Editor and Publisher, and he was telling me about it. Anyway, sorry. It's a great business. I'm a big fan.
It's the reason it's so interesting to me is that, okay, so everyone focuses on, is it 600,000 in revenues, 800,000 in revenues from this model? But also keep in mind that the founder has background in technology. So everything on that newsletter, except for the key sponsor, like the top 3 sponsors or top sponsor, is all self-entry. And so he puts it on there and he just takes it, sticks it in the newsletter. And then and they're classified ads. He calls them classifieds, which I found sort of weird because I'm thinking, I've got a puppy for sale, but that's, podcasting stuff. And so he's got his classifieds, and then so that's one product. He's got 3 products. And then the last one is logos. He just puts the logos. They're $80 a month. Everything is a recurring revenue stream if you can. But the thing is, if you have a newsletter, first of all, you have the audience your advertisers want. But, you can be creative in trying to determine the products. The second one is content marketing. They all want content marketing. They want their content to look like your content. They want to be on your webinars. They want an article that looks like your news. You can separate it out, very easily. And the one thing that I think we should all be thinking about is video. The publishers that are doing the best with the content marketing are posting a lot of video. They're selling their video. They get it in a variety of ways. Events is a great way to get video. You have a live event. I know one company that is doing a video demo produced by the person in the booth on the exhibit floor for something like 140 vendors in 3 days. And that content, not only is that an advertising package, but they also have somebody that's doing video of the speakers. And I started doing it too. And I don't like video. If you point a camera at me, I've been behind the camera. I like that. In front of the camera, you might as well be pointing a gun at my head. I don't know what's going to happen to it. I'm putting a lot of trust in you that you're going to cut my but
I will.
I don't like it yet. And I've talked about this with podnews.net too, because that's all podcasts have gone video. I don't like it, but I realize how important it is and how people learn from video. Some people want to read, but my feeling is you watch a video, you got to take notes. So if I want to implement something that's an extra step, rather have it in writing, I don't know. But video with content marketing is a big sell. All these media companies, content, and not only do you know how to write and possibly do video, but you also have all the information. You can see who's clicking on the emails. You can look at your Google Analytics. So you have a much better sense than your advertisers do. So you can go in and when you recommend a group of stories, you're providing very valuable insights, which are as important, and those insights are as important as the distribution, and they can't even be as important as you're writing the content, because you're telling them what content to write based on insights that they don't have. And I'm going to just go one more thing I want to talk about.
Yeah, no, this is great. It's all great. Local
media companies is the evolution of events. Used to be the redheaded stepchild of the newspaper industry, and then suddenly they were making so much money and you get the money up front, and then COVID came and then everything went away. I'm seeing a lot more activity with events right now. So for B2B, create a B2B strategy in your local market using events. Now you have to look at the competitive landscape. If you have a business journal or, magazine or business magazine, state capital, business magazine, that kind of thing. But, the business magazines, state business magazines are covering a lot of corporate stuff, and so are the business journals today. So there's a lot of room to cover B2B, in my opinion. And so any way that you can do awards, for a different kind of award that doesn't exist in your town, where you can bring the local business in, they're your advertisers, people want to meet them. The alt weeklies, when we had our best ofs, you try to announce an award, nobody would listen. I mean, it's just a cacophony because they all are busy meeting each other. Oh my goodness, you run this restaurant and blah, 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 blah. So we finally are like, we're not going to say, come up on the stage. We're just going to let you guys have at it, But the events for what B2B are doing is they're setting up one-to-one meetings. There's a company, there's an app for everything. There's a company called AE Ventures, which is innovative building. A lot of competition. There's like 1,400 conferences across the country. But their niche within events is they use this app to set up 1,600 one-on-one meetings between the vendors and their audience. And they have to pay for everything for the audience to get in. They pay the airfare, the hotel, the meals, and everything. And then, so that's a huge trend. We talked about video at events. The other one is anytime that you can hold a course, that's a big way to get people, a required course. If you're local, maybe not so much, but there's a mortgage brokerage media that has 200 events around the country. They have to do them regionally because these are salespeople. But the one that I wanted to point out in terms of getting creative with your events is from Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles magazine. It's now was purchased in the last year by an employee, and she came to one of our roundtables and she said that the magazine, which publishes 12 times a year, would not be able to do so without their 2 designer show houses per year. So what's a designer show house? Well, it's not at exhibit. She's partnered with a local high-end home builder. And then all of her advertisers then put their products in his home. He pays cost. And then there's 20 designers who pay a participation fee. And then she sells tickets for $40 in addition to the sponsorships, which include advertising. And each of these shows, when I tallied it up, is grossing over $500,000.
Jeez.
Each one. And the labor, they donate part of the proceeds to a charity, and the charity brings all their people in. So they're staffing these 3 or 4 days when this house is open. So it's like just really great event. They also have a tour of kitchens. So that's a self-guided tour, and you get your little wristband and you can go to one of these 12 kitchens. Anything food related is really popular. It doesn't have to be restaurant week. It could be any kind of food week that you want to set up. And one of the reasons I love events is because I think that local media, even though I said B2B is ahead, local media has this huge void in the market that they could fill. I was listening to Ezra Klein, The Quiet Catastrophe, which it was the best of Ezra Klein. And it's from like 2023, but it's so relevant today because people really miss having a community.
Yep.
Like a place, like an easy place where you don't have to go on your Calendly and book a call. Or, are you free a week from Wednesday? I don't know. I'm like, you're texting back and forth. People want no-brainer sources of, go there and find your local tribe. And that's one thing that local media can do in the event area. And also there's an absence of the narrative, the story of the place where you live. That's very tricky, but it can be done. You've probably seen this somewhere where one publication has managed to tap into this issue that's deeply interesting and the other one has not.
I had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn and I hire wrong. So our orders get all backed up. We're drowning in paperwork, then actually drowning, careless fighting off sharks with a stapler, and pirates are pillaging the office copier, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant goes beyond the resume, using unique insights to deliver a smarter shortlist. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
Yeah, I just had a guy on, and he runs a new nonprofit startup called the Richmond, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And he had previously been working for the larger news publisher in town. I'm blanking on who that is. And basically, he's like, nobody was covering city council meetings. And they just showed up and reported on it. He's like, the next week, 3 outlets send reporters like to the city council meeting because there's obviously they were kind of whiffing on it. Yeah, sorry, that was just, as you said, that was one that I just talked to somebody about.
I've seen the same thing. Justin Pardee founded the Raincross Gazette. It's newsletter only. And he founded it during COVID because it was really hard to get information about school closings and other things that affected your family and your kids. And so it's like, I'm gonna cover this stuff. It seems boring, but not if your child needs to go to school. You don't know whether they're open or they're closed. No, it's critical information. There are these veins of what is really important. And I used to find those little veins by just kind of, just being out and around and listening to what people are actually talking about. It's kind of a water cooler conversation, Are they talking about why are we spending all this money on the stadium? Or, it's not always, it's more and more national politics. I get that that's pop culture now and everybody's talking about it, but it's not always that. People are also talking about what's happening locally. How do the realtors feel about getting their commission checks cut? Where are the battles going on there? There's always something going on that people are passionate about. And the great thing about local is that you can physically connect with them. You know, like we may never meet. I hope we do, but there's only so much that you can do in a Zoom call to, build a community. And there's all these little communities within your local communities. You've got I'm a member of tennis players. Well, it's amazing. People throw a birthday party or holiday party, and you go in there expecting to meet their family and all their friends. They're all tennis players from the same club. They'll have a hard time finding those communities. And if you can empower those communities, talk about the tournaments, it doesn't have to be tennis, God forsake, let's not talk about pickleball, but that's too. So, whatever there is, and some areas are outdoorsy. We have some marathons where you swim, hike, bike, you swim, run, bike, and that's a little community unto itself. So these are all communities. If you support them, they will support you.
That's great. Most of the stuff you said definitely echoes a lot of stuff that keeps coming up on this show. Newsletters, big one. Events, huge. That comes up on almost every episode. So there's some great stuff. And also, I also wanted to mention on the pod news. Yeah. I love that example. I'm glad you brought that up. Another thing, people should go check that out. Another thing I love that they do, if anybody wants to incorporate some of that model, is they have events and job listings that they post for free to the people posting it.
That's right.
It keeps literally. I'm always looking to learn. I produce podcasts. I always browse. Yeah. What are other people hiring for? What are what events, what trainings, what are the trends and everything? And, traditionally somebody would charge to put it up there. And I go back to look at it almost, even if I'm not interested in the stories that day, and I'll just see what's happening. Anyway, that was all great stuff. Great models. I totally agree with you. Kind of in that, you kind of answered my other question that I kind of skipped about the models changing, back from the heyday when you were selling those 3 alt weeklies for $22 million. Do you have any other thoughts on that? Just, it's... the story's been told again and again, but obviously you kind of just said what everything's going towards now, but
so the only thing I want to bring up is, so I have been all the way through this cycle of the rise and fall of, certainly the alt weekly category. Business journals have been consolidated. Now they're events companies. Largely. But I listened to Tina Brown, a podcast on Tina Brown, where she's sort of talking about her career. And, she was 36 when she was the editor of Vogue, which was then, the pinnacle of success in a very successful industry, which has changed. And she said, you know what? I'm really glad I had that in my life, because today, and she's had some failed media ventures. She started Talk, didn't go very well. And she says, well, I can't remember whether it's Bulwark or Daily Beast, but she's found another big one that was very successful. But she said, I'm glad I had that part of my life, because today it's so stressful to do media. You have all this technology, you have all these channels, anybody can get into it. So you've got tons of competition. You're looking over your shoulder, and you never know whether it's going to hit or what's going to hit. And I thought about it, and I thought, I think those of us who stay in the industry out of love and passion or whatever it is, don't necessarily give ourselves enough credit for, it's a very stressful industry. It's not easy to be certainly not a hyper-local media that was founded in a news desert. It's just not an easy thing to do. And then everyone's coming on your podcast and saying, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. It's you're like, okay, there's only 8 hours a day. I'm exhausted. I don't even want to think about it anymore. So, the media industry has changed, and I think it requires a new attitude toward, we talked about technology. You have to give yourself the time to invest your resources, your staff resources, and whatever else you need in the technology. So if you're going around selling ads against content frantically, and you think, if only I do it, 20% faster, I will be able to invest in technology. No, you have to do that. You have to do everything now. I spend 2 hours a day on it.
On technology?
On
Thinking
technology.
about it, learning stuff? Gotcha.
Not even counting the learning. Just going on my roadmap, reviewing what's been done, making new assignments, seeing what I think, planning for the future, all that stuff.
That's great. You've talked twice now about how media companies, local media especially, need to embrace technology, not be afraid of it. Like you said, you spend 2 hours a day on it. So the ultimate technology these days, I think you know what I'm going to talk about, is and you wrote a piece. AI. It comes up on every episode. Shocker. And you wrote a piece a while back, I think, on Edit. I don't remember. I saw it, Editor and Publisher, maybe. Just a quote you wrote was that you called it both partner and predator. And I've seen that echoed on this show. I get most people are like in the middle. Some people really don't like it. Some people are very open to it. But I'd like to just, for you to talk a bit about your thoughts on AI in particular. And also, you said you're spending 2 hours a day learning this stuff, working with tech. Do you use any tools also in your workflow? Just anything AI that comes to mind. Yeah.
Yes, we do. So we started having AI exchanges with the publishers, and wow, real eye opener. A lot of people are lurking and listening. However, we have companies just getting on an AI tool, making a commercial at a conference, and just basically, I just made you this video commercial. We've got salespeople on Suno.ai that are sending songs about their customer's problem to their customer, That's kind of the fun stuff. I have found two things I wanted to bring up that I think are useful. One is a little company called Lutra AI. And I did a demo. Probably won't be doing that again. It was really tough where I tried to walk somebody literally from posting a bunch of websites in a Google Sheet to creating the first draft of a curated newsletter in a playbook that they could run every day or every week or whatever they wanted. And at the end of the roundtable, there were 3 publishers. I was like, listen, get on there and just do it while I'm talking. Give me your questions.
Mhm.
So I don't advise you doing something similar in your webcast. It's not really that easy, but 3 of them actually did. And it's not that easy to use. There's a little bit of a learning curve because you have to do it kind of piecemeal, one bit at a time. You can't say, I want to do this, and then I want to do this, and I want to do this.
Right.
And so, but I now use that tool to find audiences. So let's say and you can use a combination. So let's say you want to find, I want pet stores and yoga salons. And remember, these are your audience too. They might be advertisers, or they could just be your audience. Like you got an income group, they got a job, that they're on LinkedIn, whatever. So you can use Chat GPT to find those groups, or you can find the sources from those, and you just take the list, stick it into Lutra, and Lutra will find the marketing director. If you want the marketing director, it will find whatever job title that you want, and it will find a good portion of their emails. So you're all trying to build your newsletters. How do I do it? Do I have to, how do I find emails when search is going down? Do I have to put gate my content? Yes, I think you should gate your content. Hard gate, not one. But the thing is that so that's one tool to get more emails. And you can clean it. I use Never Bounce to clean the emails. You can send them a nice little personal note if you want to kind of warm it up a little bit. But you can find it. There's other ways to do it. Wizza with Sales Navigator will get job titles as well. And, for one company had a local fitness magazine. And I was like, look, I went on there and I could find, 10 categories of people interested in fitness. on LinkedIn, even LinkedIn. So you can find those things. The other one that is sort of miraculous that some of the members are using is Replit.
Is that
Have
where
you
you
heard?
code? It helps you code stuff? Vibe coding, is that what
Yes.
they call it? Yeah. I haven't used it, but I hear about it on some podcasts I listen to and stuff. I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've tried a couple different things. I wanted to build an app for tennis ball machine drills. So I got in there and I kind of went crazy. And then I thought, no, don't go off down that rabbit hole anymore. But a lot of the people that are following Niche Media Insider Niche Media Publisher, Niche Publisher are boomers, and they're getting close to their succession strategy. And so I've talked to some business brokers that handle specifically media. You probably know their names. There's only a few. So the big ones are now, they don't want magazines. They want events, by the way. So that's kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Your recurring revenue, your events, and your key man in place. So they don't want you to leave and then there being no company, right? So I could leave my company right now. That's one of the reasons I'm developing a lot of software. But I wanted to find who's buying niche media companies, who's buying the hyperlocal, the city magazines, the business journals, the, Philadelphia foodie niche media. Who's doing that? So Replit is, I think I've spent maybe 3 or 4 hours on it, and I'm pretty close to having an app that will update, and I can just put it on my website, and I can paywall block it if I want, or I can just leave it up there, and that will, or I can have it members only, or I can just use it to gain traffic or put a gate on top of it so I can collect emails. So I'm a fan. Not that things can't go wrong,
Yeah.
but again, into that like 2 hours a day you're spending on something, you might test it out today and then have the brilliant idea a month from now.
That's been one of my favorite questions I've been asking, because every time it's something different, something that people bring up, what they think about it or what tools they're using or whatever. It's such a big, I think AI has a branding problem. I've said it before. First of all, it sounds scary, artificial intelligence. I think if it's just a different kind of software or something like that, people wouldn't be so hesitant about it. And also it's just so big. There's so many different things it can do. So
That's right.
Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah. And so one of the things we're launching in January, it's almost, it should be done by the end of the week. That's my promise. And I'll launch it probably in January. But it's a directory of the technology that has been recommended by other members or is in a case study. So, there's hundreds of AI tools.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's much more interesting to figure out how other publishers are using it and for what than it is to just know it exists, so.
Right.
So that's what we read. I thought about, I was like, maybe I should have built it on Replit, but no, it doesn't have information. The only way you can get that information is to be able to get your community together and track that.
Yep. Great stuff. Alisa, I have like 10 more questions I could probably ask you, but we've kind of gone over time and I have another meeting coming up here.
Okay.
Pretty quick. But thanks for coming on, and please tell me where people can find you, what you want me to link to or promote so I can put it in the show notes and everything.
Yeah, so you can just go to NichePublisher.biz, and if you click join, you can join. If you click about us, I've got my email on there. You can book a time with me if you want to if you got a question. We're really big on community, so we're used to people just having urgent questions they need the answer to right away.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. And for anybody listening, those tools, the Replit, and I forgot the name of the other one, but I'll go back when I'm editing it.
Lutra
AI. I'll link to those too if anybody wants to check them out also. Alisa, great to meet you. This was great. I might have to have you on again because I feel like I could pick your brain for a long time on a lot of this stuff. So I appreciate you taking the time.
I'm excited to see what your newsletter. I just signed up for it today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, awesome. Goes out on Thursday, so
I
thanks.
like to follow. I like to have somebody else to follow in the local media space.
Awesome.
We all get insulated in our people we're used to talking to.
Right. Yep. That's one of the reasons I do this podcast. I'm always meeting new people. So, cool. Alisa, thank you. Hope you have a great day.
You too.
Yep. Thank you for listening to Small Press Big Ideas. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to help the show, the best thing you can do is to tell a friend or colleague and just take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to right now. It only takes a minute out of your day, but it really does help the podcast grow and reach more ears. Check back for new episodes every Monday.